How do you forgive the people who taught you that love is something you have to earn, and then refuse to let you? The champagne tasted like promises I'd never be part of. I stood at the back of the reception hall, glass in hand, watching my sister Madison glide across the floor in her $1,000 dress. Everything about her wedding screamed perfection: the cascading floral arrangements, the string quartet, the guests in their designer suits and cocktail dresses. Even the lighting seemed softer around her, like the universe itself wanted to make her glow. I'd helped pay for those flowers. Not that anyone knew or cared. My parents sat at the head table, my mother's hand resting on my father's arm, both of them beaming with the kind of pride I'd spent 28 years trying to earn. My father, silver-haired, broad-shouldered, the kind of man who commanded rooms without raising his voice, looked like he might burst from happiness. Madison had always been easy to love. Straight A's without trying. Prom queen. Full-ride scholarship to Yale. And now, marrying a neurosurgeon who looked like he walked off a magazine cover. She was the story my parents told at dinner parties, the daughter they introduced first, the one whose accomplishments they recited like prayers. I was the footnote, the one who'd chosen nursing instead of medical school, who'd rented instead of bought, who'd dated the wrong men and worked the night shift and never quite lived up to the potential they swore I was wasting. I'd stopped trying to correct them years ago. Stopped mentioning my promotions, my certifications, the patients who wrote thank you cards addressed specifically to me. It didn't matter. In their eyes I was always just less. But I showed up. Every holiday, every birthday, every crisis. When my mother had her knee surgery, I took 2 weeks off to help her recover. When my father's business nearly collapsed, I'd co-signed a loan I was still paying off. When Madison needed a bridesmaid who'd handle the logistics she found boring, I'd spent 6 months coordinating dress fittings and bachelorette parties and vendor calls. Because that's what family does, right? The DJ's voice cut through the music. Ladies and gentlemen, the father of the bride would like to say a few words. My father stood, glass raised, that familiar smile spreading across his face. The room quieted. Madison pressed her hand to her chest, eyes already glistening. When you have children, he began, his voice warm and steady, you never know how they'll turn out. You hope. You pray. You do your best. I felt my mother's eyes flick toward me for just a second before returning to Madison. Some kids make you proud from the moment they're born, he continued. They work hard. They make smart choices. They become the kind of people you can't wait to brag about. Madison laughed, wiping at her eyes. The neurosurgeon squeezed her hand. My father paused, letting the moment breathe. Then his smile shifted just slightly, just enough. And then, others just take up space. The room erupted in laughter. Not cruel laughter. Not malicious. Just casual. Comfortable. The kind of laughter that comes when a joke confirms what everyone already believes. I didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't breathe. My father raised his glass higher. To Madison, the daughter who made it all worth it. To Madison, the room echoed. I watched him drink. Watched my mother kiss his cheek. Watched Madison glow under the weight of their adoration. And I felt something inside me. Something I'd been protecting my entire life crack clean through. I set my glass down on the nearest table. And I started planning my disappearance. Drop of blood, what would you have done in her place? I didn't leave the reception. That would have been too obvious. Too dramatic. The kind of thing that would give them ammunition. Erika's always so sensitive. Can't even take a joke. So I stayed. I stood there with my untouched champagne while the toasts continued. Madison's maid of honor, some college friend I'd met twice, told a story about a sorority formal. The neurosurgeon's brother made a joke about golf handicaps. Everyone laughed at the right moments, sighed at the sentimental parts, raised their glasses on cue. I watched it all like I was behind glass. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. I'd expected my body to react. Trembling fingers, tight chest, the hot sting of tears I'd have to blink away in the bathroom. But instead there was just stillness. The kind of quiet that comes after something breaks so completely there's nothing left to rattle. I could see everything with perfect clarity. My mother, reapplying lipstick at the table, checking her reflection in a compact mirror. She hadn't looked at me once since the toast. Not in concern. Not in apology. Not even in acknowledgement. She'd laughed too. A polite musical sound that told me exactly how much my feelings mattered. My sister, radiant on the dance floor, her veil trailing behind her like something out of a fairy tale. She'd heard the joke. She'd been sitting 3 feet from me when our father said it. And she'd done nothing. Not a glance. Not a word. Just that same glowing smile, like I was part of the decoration she'd hired someone else to arrange. My father, now surrounded by relatives, accepting congratulations like he'd just delivered the State of the Union. He wasn't cruel. That was the worst part. He wasn't a villain in some melodrama, twirling a mustache and cackling at my pain. He was just indifferent. I was the punchline to a joke he'd already forgotten. Others just take up space. The words sat in my chest like stones. I'd heard variations of it my whole life. Little comments, offhand remarks, the kind of thing that's easy to dismiss in the moment but calcifies over years. Madison's the smart one. Erika's, well, she tries. We can't all be exceptional, sweetheart. Maybe if you'd applied yourself like your sister. But this was different. This was public. This was him standing in front of 200 people. Friends, family, colleagues, and announcing that I was worthless. And everyone had agreed. I replayed the moment in my head, frame by frame. The way he'd paused before the punchline, timing it perfectly. The way the room had erupted, like they'd all been waiting for permission to laugh at me. The way Madison had wiped happy tears from her eyes, completely unbothered. How many of them had thought it before he said it out loud? How many times had I walked into a room and been dismissed before I even opened my mouth? I thought about the loan I'd co-signed. $17,000 I was still paying off month after month, while my father drove a new Lexus and my mother redecorated the living room. They'd never asked how I was managing. Never offered to take over the payments. It was just expected, the same way my help was always expected, my time, my energy, my silence. I thought about the night shifts I picked up to help pay for Madison's bridal shower. The one my mother had insisted be held at that expensive bistro downtown, with the prix-fixe menu and the champagne tower. I'd worked 60 hours that week, my feet aching, my back screaming, so my sister could have one perfect afternoon. She'd barely thanked me. I thought about every birthday where my gift was an afterthought. Every holiday where I was the one who cleaned up while everyone else relaxed. Every family photo where I was cropped out or positioned at the edge, just barely in frame. The invisible daughter. The spare. The one taking up space. Something cold and sharp settled in my stomach. Not anger, not yet. Anger was too hot, too reckless. This was something clearer. Calmer. This was understanding. I'd spent my entire life trying to prove I was enough. Trying to earn a love that was never actually on the table. I twisted myself into shapes I didn't recognize. Sacrificed things I couldn't afford, swallowed hurt after hurt after hurt. All for people who saw me as less than. Who enjoyed seeing me as less than. The DJ announced the cake cutting. Madison and the neurosurgeon posed with a knife, her hand over his, both of them grinning for the photographer. The cake was 4 tiers of Italian buttercream and edible gold leaf. I'd helped pay for that too. My phone buzzed in my clutch. A text from my coworker Jenny. "How's the wedding? You surviving?" I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I typed back. "I'm leaving. Not the reception. Everything. Drop of blood should she stop. Or finish what she started." I didn't go home that night. I drove. No destination, no plan. Just my car and the highway and the silence I'd been craving for years. The wedding venue disappeared in my rearview mirror. All those twinkling lights and perfect smiles swallowed by darkness. I rolled down the windows and let the cold air strip away the smell of champagne and roses and expensive perfume. For the first time all night I could breathe. I ended up at a 24-hour diner 40 miles outside the city. The kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like burnt promises. A tired waitress brought me a menu I didn't read and a cup I didn't drink from. I just sat there, staring at my reflection in the window, trying to recognize the woman staring back. When did I become this person? The one who accepted cruelty as normal. The one who paid for her own invisibility. The one who kept showing up to be humiliated again and again, because some broken part of her still believed that if she just tried hard enough, loved hard enough, sacrificed enough, they'd finally see her. My phone lit up on the table. 7 missed calls. 12 texts. "Where did you go? Mom's asking about you. You're being dramatic." It was just a joke, Erika. You're ruining Madison's night. I turned it face down. The waitress refilled my untouched coffee. Rough night. Something like that. She nodded like she understood, like she'd seen 1,000 women sit in this exact booth with that exact expression. You need anything, honey, just holler. I almost cried. A stranger showing me more kindness in 10 seconds than my own family had in 28 years. When I finally got home, it was 3 a.m. My apartment was small, a one-bedroom I could barely afford, but it was mine. No photographs of Madison on the walls. No heirlooms from my mother that came with lectures about responsibility. No reminders of who I was supposed to be. I made tea I didn't drink and sat at my kitchen table with my laptop. Then I opened a spreadsheet. Debt. The co-signed loan. $17,000 remaining. The credit card I'd maxed helping with the wedding. $4,200. The personal loan to my mother last year. Never repaid $2,800. Total. $24,000. Base salary. $62,000 per year. Monthly take-home after taxes and insurance. $3,800. Current expenses. Rent, utilities, car, groceries $2,900. Leftover. $900. At my current rate, paying minimums while they kept asking for more, I'd be trapped for years. But if I stopped helping, stopped answering their calls, stopped being the emergency fund and the emotional support and the family doormat, I could be free in 18 months. I stared at the numbers until they blurred. Then I opened another tab and searched. Nursing jobs, West Coast. The first week I didn't answer their calls. The second week, I responded with texts so brief they couldn't gain traction. Busy with work. Talk later. By the third week, they'd stopped pretending it was about checking in. My mother. Your father is very hurt by your behavior. You owe him an apology. My sister, you're being selfish. This is my time and you're making it about you. My father, call me. Now. I didn't. Instead, I picked up every extra shift the hospital offered. I worked 60-hour weeks, then 70. I stopped buying coffee out. Stopped ordering takeout. I ate ramen and eggs and whatever was on sale. And every spare dollar went toward the debts that kept me chained to people who didn't love me. A night I applied to jobs. Seattle. Portland. San Diego. San Francisco. Places where no one knew me. Where I could rebuild myself without their voices in my head, telling me I was wasting my potential, disappointing them, taking up space. I got 3 interviews in the first month. 4 job offers in the second. I chose Seattle. A hospital with better pay, better benefits, and 2,800 miles between me and the family that had spent my entire life making me feel small. The only person I told was Jenny. We met for coffee on my day off, my first real break in weeks. I looked like hell. Dark circles, weight I'd lost without trying. Hands that shook slightly when I held my cup. But I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. You're really doing this, Jenny said. Not a question. An observation. I'm really doing this. What about your family? I thought about the toast. About my mother's averted eyes. About Madison erasing me from her wedding photos. About my father's indifference, sharp and casual as a blade. What about them? Jenny reached across the table and squeezed my hand. She didn't tell me I was being rash. Didn't remind me that family is forever. Didn't suggest I give them another chance. She just said, I'm proud of you. I broke down right there in the coffee shop. Ugly, shaking sobs I'd been holding back for months. Years. Maybe my whole life. Because that was the first time anyone had ever said those words to me. That night I pulled out a box from the back of my closet. Inside were letters. Dozens of them, written in my grandmother's shaky cursive. She died when I was 16. The only person in my family who'd ever made me feel like I mattered. Not for what I achieved or how I compared to Madison, but just for existing. I unfolded one at random. My darling Erika, your mother called today, worried you're not focused enough. I told her the same thing I'll tell you. The world will try to make you small. People who love you conditionally will spend your whole life moving the goalpost, making you chase approval you'll never catch. Don't shrink for them, sweetheart. Don't break yourself trying to fit into spaces that were never meant to hold you. You are not too much. You are not too little. You are exactly enough. Asterisk love always. Grandma. I pressed the letter to my chest and let myself cry again. Then I opened my laptop and accepted the job offer. 18 months. That's all I needed. 18 months to pay off every debt, sever every tie, and disappear into a life they couldn't touch. The descent wasn't into darkness. It was into clarity. And for the first time in my life, I knew exactly what I was doing. Drop of blood. Some people don't deserve a place in your healing. The hunting started small. Not with grand gestures or confrontations. Not with the kind of revenge that announces itself. This was surgical. Methodical. The kind of thing they wouldn't notice until it was too late. I became a ghost in my own family. Every Sunday dinner invitation. Can't make it. Working. Every holiday planning text. I'll let you know closer to the date. Every guilt trip call from my mother. Sent to voicemail. Responded to 12 hours later with a single sentence. Sorry, was at the hospital. They thought I was sulking. Punishing them with silence because I couldn't take a joke. I could feel their irritation growing with every declined invitation, every brief text, every call I didn't return fast enough. Good. Let them be irritated. Let them feel a fraction of what I'd felt my entire life. Being an afterthought, an inconvenience. Someone whose presence didn't matter until her absence became noticeable. But I wasn't just pulling away. I was dismantling. Month 1. I paid off the credit card. $4,000 gone in a single payment that made my bank account scream. But when I logged in the next day and saw that balance at zero, something in my chest unlocked. No more monthly reminders of Madison's perfect wedding. No more interest accruing on centerpieces and champagne towers, and a cake that cost more than my monthly rent. I cut up the card that night. Felt the plastic crack between my fingers. Threw it in the trash with the wedding invitation I'd kept on my fridge for months. That elegant calligraphy mocking me every time I reached for milk. You are cordially invited to watch yourself be erased. Not anymore. Month 2. I stopped being available. My mother called on a Tuesday afternoon. I was between shifts, eating a protein bar in my car, when her name lit up my screen. I let it ring. Watched it go to voicemail. Listened to the message an hour later. Erika, honey, we need you to pick up your father's prescription. The pharmacy closes at 6 and I have book club. Call me back. I deleted it. Didn't call back. Didn't explain. Didn't offer an alternative. The pharmacy was 4 blocks from their house. Book club was optional. This was a test. See if the daughter who always said yes would still come running. She called again at 5:45 p.m. Then 6:15. Then 3 times the next morning. I responded at noon, sorry, was working. Can't help. Her reply came in seconds. This is very inconsiderate, Erika. Your father needed that medication. I didn't respond. 20 minutes later. Madison would have helped. I turned off my phone. Month 3. I started planning the logistics. Seattle had sent the formal offer. Start date. 18 months from now, pending my notice period and their onboarding schedule. The salary was 15% higher than what I made now. The benefits were better. The apartment listings I'd saved showed places with actual sunlight, hardwood floors, views of the water. A whole life. 3,000 miles away. I made lists in a notebook I kept hidden in my nightstand. Things to sell. Furniture, most of it. My mother's heirloom dishes. She'd given them to me. Said they were special. Never mentioned she got them at HomeGoods. The necklace Madison gave me for my birthday 3 years ago. Still in the box, never worn. Things to keep. Grandmother's letters. My nursing certifications. Photos that didn't have them in it. Things to cancel. Shared family phone plan. Emergency contact authorizations. Joint membership to the gym I never used, my mother's idea. So we can spend time together. We never did. Every item I crossed off felt like cutting a rope. Month 4. They started noticing. My father showed up at my apartment unannounced on a Saturday morning. I was still in my scrubs from the overnight shift, exhausted and irritable, when I heard the knock. I opened the door to find him standing there with that familiar expression, mild annoyance mixed with entitlement. You haven't been answering your phone. I've been working. For 4 months. Yes. He pushed past me into the apartment. I didn't stop him. Didn't offer coffee. Just stood by the door waiting for him to say what he came to say. He looked around like he was cataloging evidence. The bare walls. The packed boxes I'd labeled storage, but were really prepped for the move. The absence of family photos. Your mother is worried about you. I'm fine. You missed Madison's baby announcement dinner. I hadn't known there was a baby announcement dinner. No one had told me. I'd found out Madison was pregnant from her Instagram post. A perfectly staged photo of tiny shoes and a sonogram with the caption "Our greatest adventure begins." 300 people knew before I did. I was working, I said again. You're always working. His tone sharpened. This attitude needs to stop, Erika. Family is supposed to be a priority. The laugh came out before I could stop it. Sharp and humorless. Family, I repeated. Is that what we are? Don't be dramatic. I'm not. I'm asking a genuine question. What part of how you've treated me feels like family? His jaw tightened. One joke at a wedding and you're going to punish us forever? Grow up. One joke. As if it hadn't been a lifetime of jokes. A lifetime of being compared and dismissed and tolerated instead of loved. I walked to the door and opened it. I have to sleep. I work again tonight. Erika. Thanks for stopping by. He stared at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Maybe I'd always been one, and he was just now noticing. He left without another word. I closed the door and leaned against it, heart hammering. That was the closest I'd come to breaking, to screaming everything I'd been holding back. But I didn't, because the plan wasn't to make them understand. It was to make them irrelevant. Month 5. I sold everything. The furniture went on Craigslist. The dishes went to Goodwill. The necklace from Madison I listed on a resale site. Someone bought it within hours. Every dollar went into the fund. The escape fund. The freedom fund. The loan balance dropped to $10,000. Then 8. Then 5. I could see the finish line. Jenny helped me pack one evening, folding clothes while I sorted through papers. She held up a family Christmas card from 2 years ago. The kind with the glossy photo and the cheerful update letter. The Anderson family had a wonderful year. Madison graduated summa cum laude and accepted a position at... I wasn't mentioned. Not once. They really just... Jenny trailed off, shaking her head. Yeah. You know this isn't normal, right? The way they treat you. I know. Do they? I took the card from her hands and fed it into the paper shredder I'd bought specifically for this purge. Watched it turn to confetti. They're about to. Month 6. The phone calls became desperate. My mother, we need to talk about your behavior. This is affecting the whole family. Madison. Mom's crying because of you. Are you happy now? My father, you're being selfish and childish. I expected better. I saved every message. Didn't respond to any of them. Let them spiral. Let them panic. Let them finally feel what it's like when someone you've taken for granted stops being available. I wasn't sulking. I was disappearing. And they were just starting to realize they couldn't stop me. Drop of blood. The quietest revenge is becoming unreachable. The box appeared on my doorstep on a Tuesday. No return address. Just my name written in my mother's careful cursive across the top. I almost left it there. Almost kicked it back into the hallway and pretended it didn't exist. But curiosity, or maybe some sick sense of obligation I still hadn't killed, made me bring it inside. I set it on my kitchen counter and stared at it for an hour. Then I opened it. Inside were photos. Dozens of them, loose and disorganized, like someone had grabbed them in a hurry. Me as a toddler. Me in elementary school. Middle school graduation. High school prom. My nursing school acceptance letter. Folded and creased like it had been read multiple times. And beneath the photos, a note. I found these in the attic. Thought you might want them before you throw away your entire family. Mom. The guilt trip was obvious. The manipulation clear. But my hands were shaking as I spread the photos across my counter, because I'd never seen most of them before. There was one of me at maybe 4 years old, gap-toothed and grinning, holding a painting I'd made. My mother stood beside me, smiling. Actually smiling. At me. Another from my 10th birthday. I was blowing out candles, eyes squeezed shut in concentration, and my father had his hand on my shoulder. Proud, protective. Like I mattered. More me at 13, braces and acne, wearing a soccer uniform. Me at 16 with my grandmother, both of us laughing at something the camera couldn't capture. Me at my nursing school graduation, cap slightly crooked, diploma held high. They looked like memories from someone else's life. Because I didn't remember these moments. Didn't remember my mother smiling at my paintings or my father's hand on my shoulder. My memories were all corrections and comparisons, disappointment and dismissal. Madison wouldn't have done it that way. Why can't you be more like your sister? We expected better from you, Erika. But these photos told a different story. Or maybe they told the beginning of one before something shifted. Before I became the spare, the afterthought, the daughter taking up space. I picked up my phone and did something I'd avoided for months. I called my mother. She answered on the first ring. Erika. Her voice was tight, controlled. Wounded in that performative way she'd perfected. I got the box. Good. Maybe it'll remind you that we're not monsters. I almost laughed. When did it change? What? In these photos you look at me like you actually love me. When did that stop? Silence. Long enough that I thought she might hang up. Then, that's not fair. None of this is fair, Mom. That's the point. You were such an easy baby, she said finally, voice softer now. Nostalgic. You slept through the night at 6 weeks. You barely cried. You'd sit for hours just watching everything, these big curious eyes taking it all in. I waited. Madison was harder. Colicky, demanding. Your father and I were so exhausted those first years. But you. She paused. You never needed anything. You just managed. Something cold settled in my chest. And when you got older, she continued, you were so independent. So capable. You figured things out on your own. We didn't have to worry about you the way we worried about Madison. So you stopped trying. That's not, we didn't stop. We just, Madison needed more attention. More guidance. She was sensitive, fragile in ways you never were. I was a child, Mom. I needed you too. You never said anything. I shouldn't have had to. More silence. And later. I pressed, needing her to say it. When we were older and Madison was excelling and I was just there? When did I become the punchline? You're being dramatic. Dad called me worthless in front of 200 people. You laughed. It was a joke, Erika. He didn't mean. Yes, he did. My voice cracked. He meant every word. And you know what the worst part is? I don't think he even realizes how cruel it was. Because that's how he's always seen me. That's how you've all always seen me. That's not true. Then why am I the one who pays your bills? Why am I the one who shows up every time you need something? Why am I the emergency contact and the backup plan and the one who makes everything work behind the scenes? But Madison's the daughter you're proud of. I heard her breath catch. I spent my whole life trying to earn what you gave her for free, I whispered. And I'm done. Erika, please. I hung up. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept going back to the photos, trying to find the exact moment everything changed. Was it when Madison started school and became the star student? Was it when I chose nursing and they realized I'd never be the doctor they could brag about? Was it gradual, a slow erosion I'd been too young to notice? Or had I always been the easy one, the manageable one, the daughter who didn't require effort so they stopped giving it? At 2 a.m., I pulled out my grandmother's letters again. Found one I'd read 100 times but suddenly understood differently. Your mother called today. She's worried about you taking on too many shifts at the hospital. I told her maybe you wouldn't have to work so hard if she stopped asking you to bail out your father's business mistakes. She said you never complained. Oh, my darling girl. That's the problem, isn't it? You're so good at not complaining that they've convinced themselves you don't hurt. But I see you. I've always seen you. I pressed the letter to my chest and finally let myself feel the full weight of it. They hadn't started loving me less. They just never learned to love me enough. The next morning, I went to the storage unit I'd rented and started going through the boxes I'd packed. Things I'd kept out of obligation, gifts from birthdays and Christmases, cards with generic messages, photo albums where I appeared in the background. And I found my high school yearbook. I flipped to the senior superlatives page. Madison had won 3. Most likely to succeed, best smile, teacher's pet. Her photo appeared in the collage, that perfect practice grin. My name appeared once, in tiny print at the bottom. Academic Excellence Award, Erika Anderson. I'd graduated valedictorian. My parents hadn't come to the ceremony. My father had a business dinner. My mother had stayed home with Madison, who had a cold. My grandmother had been there. Front row. Sobbing with pride. I'd buried the disappointment so deep I'd almost forgotten it existed. But looking at that yearbook now, in this storage unit surrounded by evidence of a life I was dismantling, I finally let myself be angry. Not the hot, explosive kind. The cold, clarifying kind. They'd had chances. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Every achievement I'd downplayed because no one seemed to care. Every time I'd needed them and they chose Madison instead. Every moment they could have seen me and chose not to. I thought I was the problem. But the revelation sitting in my chest like a stone was this. I was never the problem. I was just never going to be Madison. And they'd punished me for it my entire life. I called Jenny on my drive home. I need you to tell me the truth, I said. Am I crazy? For what? For leaving. For cutting them off. For Erika. Her voice was firm. You're the sanest person I know. And that family is lucky you're only walking away instead of burning the whole thing down. I laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. You know what my therapist told me last week? Jenny continued. She said sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is grieve the family you needed, and accept the one you got. And then decide you deserve better. Do I? Deserve better? Are you serious right now? Sometimes I think maybe I'm just. Stop. You're not too sensitive. You're not overreacting. You're not being dramatic. They failed you, Erika. They're still failing you. And the fact that you're questioning yourself instead of them tells me exactly how deep this damage goes. I pulled into my apartment complex and sat in the dark car, phone pressed to my ear. How do I stop feeling guilty? You don't. Not right away. But eventually you'll realize that guilt is just another way they control you. And you'll be too free to care. That night, I went through every photo my mother had sent. I kept 3, one with my grandmother, one from my nursing graduation, and the painting from when I was 4. The rest I put back in the box. And I wrote a note of my own. Thank you for the reminder of who I used to be, before you convinced me I wasn't enough. I didn't mail it. I just needed to write the words. Because the revelation wasn't that they'd changed. It was that I'd finally stopped waiting for them to. Drop of blood. Some families are just practice for learning who not to become. Her name was Dr. Sarah Chan, and she appeared in my life the way all good things do, when I'd stopped looking for them. It was month 7. I just finished a brutal 12-hour shift in the ICU, the kind where you lose 2 patients and save 1 and go home wondering if you did enough. I was sitting in my car in the hospital parking garage, still in my scrubs, too exhausted to drive but too wired to sit still. My phone buzzed. Another message from Madison. Mom told me what you said to her. You're being incredibly hurtful. This is affecting her health. But I guess you don't care about. Or they're mad you stopped giving something they took for granted. I looked at her sharply. How? Like I said. 15 years. She smiled, but it was sad. Also, I've been where you are. Different details, same shape. Your family too? My father specifically. Successful surgeon. Brilliant, demanding, emotionally constipated. I was supposed to follow in his footsteps, neurosurgery, the whole legacy thing. But I went into psych instead. She shrugged. He told me I was wasting my potential. That I'd chosen the easy path. That he was disappointed. What did you do? I stopped trying to convince him I mattered. Moved across the country. Built a life he couldn't touch. Haven't spoken to him in 8 years. The relief that flooded through me was almost painful. And you don't feel guilty? Every day, she admitted. But guilt isn't the same as being wrong. I can feel guilty and still know I made the right choice. Those two things can coexist. I picked up my coffee cup just to have something to hold. My dad called me worthless at my sister's wedding. In front of everyone. And they all laughed. Sarah's expression darkened. Jesus. My mom says it was just a joke. That I'm being too sensitive. Your mom is wrong. And cruel. She leaned forward. Can I tell you something I learned the hard way? I nodded. Families that minimize your pain are families that need you to stay small. Because if you're allowed to be hurt, they have to admit they caused it. And people who are invested in seeing themselves as good people can't handle that cognitive dissonance. So they gaslight you instead. The words hit like a sledgehammer. I've been planning to leave, I said quietly. Move to Seattle. Cut them off. Good. I feel like a terrible person. Why? Because you won't let them keep hurting you. Because families are supposed to forgive each other. They're supposed to work through things. Erika. Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. Forgiveness isn't reconciliation. You can forgive someone and still never speak to them again. You can acknowledge they did their best and still decide their best wasn't good enough. And you can walk away from people who hurt you, even if they're family, without being the villain. I felt something crack open in my chest. How do you know when it's time to stop trying? When trying costs more than leaving. She held my gaze. When you're so busy managing their feelings that you've forgotten how to feel your own. When you realize you're not actually in a relationship with them. You're just performing one. I thought about the last 6 months. The unanswered calls. The guilt trips. The constant demand that I explain, justify, apologize. Not once had any of them asked how I was. Not once had they said, "What do you need?" It had all been about their discomfort with my absence. Their irritation that I'd stopped being convenient. I have $11,000 left on a loan I co-signed for my dad, I said. Once that's paid off, I'm gone. How long? 7 more months. Sarah pulled out her phone and typed something. Then she slid it across the table. A contact card. Dr. Sarah Chun with her personal number. You're going to doubt yourself between now and then, she said. They're going to escalate. They're going to try everything: guilt, anger, weaponized nostalgia, fake emergencies, flying monkeys. And you're going to wonder if you're making a mistake. How do you know? Because that's what they do when they realize they're losing control. So when that happens, when you're standing in your apartment at 2 a.m. questioning everything, you text me. Okay. I stared at the number on my screen. Why are you helping me? Because someone helped me. And because you deserve to know that leaving doesn't make you broken. It makes you brave. We met for coffee the following week. Then dinner the week after that. Sarah became something I hadn't had in years. A witness. Not someone who tried to fix me or convince me I was overreacting. Just someone who listened when I needed to talk and sat in comfortable silence when I didn't. She told me about her own escape. The months of planning. The moment she packed her car and drove 18 hours without stopping. The first morning she woke up in her new apartment and realized no one could reach her unless she allowed it. It's not perfect, she admitted over Thai food. I still have moments where I miss the idea of them. The family I wish I'd had. But I don't miss the reality. And that distinction matters. Do you regret it? Never. Not once. She met my eyes. My only regret is that I didn't do it sooner. Month 8. I paid the loan down to $6,000. Month 9. Sarah helped me practice setting boundaries. We role-played conversations, anticipated manipulations, rehearsed the words I'd need when they tried to pull me back in. You don't owe them an explanation, she'd remind me. No is a complete sentence. Month 10. My mother showed up at the hospital. I was at the nurse's station when I looked up and saw her standing by the elevator, scanning the floor. My heart lurched. I almost ducked into a patient room, but Sarah's words echoed. You can't hide forever. At some point you have to stand in your truth. I walked over. Mom, what are you doing here? She turned, and for a second I saw genuine relief in her eyes. Then it hardened into something else. Anger maybe. Or fear disguised as righteousness. You won't answer my calls. I've been busy. For 10 months. Yes. We need to talk about this, Erika. Really talk. Okay. Talk. She glanced around the busy floor. Clearly uncomfortable. Not here. Then where? Because I'm not coming to the house. And I'm not doing Sunday dinners. So if you have something to say, say it now. Her mouth tightened. Your father wants to apologize. No, he doesn't. He does. Mom. I kept my voice low, controlled. If he wanted to apologize, he would have done it 10 months ago. Or any of the hundreds of times I've given him the opportunity. This isn't about him feeling sorry. It's about you being uncomfortable with me not falling in line. That's not fair. What's not fair is spending 28 years trying to earn love that should have been unconditional. What's not fair is being told I take up space by the man who's supposed to protect me. What's not fair is watching you all laugh while I died inside. Her eyes filled with tears. I'm your mother. Then act like it. The words hung between us, sharp and final. I don't understand what you want from us, she whispered. Nothing, I said. And I meant it. I don't want anything from you anymore. I turned and walked back to the nurse's station. Didn't look back. Didn't wait to see if she'd follow. She didn't. That night, Sarah and I sat on my apartment floor surrounded by boxes, eating pizza and drinking cheap wine. You did good today, she said. I feel like I'm going to throw up. That's normal. You just set a boundary with someone who's spent your whole life teaching you that you're not allowed to have them. She cried. People cry when they lose power. Doesn't mean you did anything wrong. I took a long drink of wine. What if I regret this? Then you'll deal with it. But Erika. She waited until I looked at her. I don't think you will. I think one day you're going to wake up in Seattle, and you're going to realize you can't remember the last time you felt small. And that'll be the day you know it was worth it. $3,000 left on the loan. Then $2,000. Then $1,000. Sarah threw me a Freedom's Almost Here party in month 14. Just the two of us, take out Chinese food, and a bottle of champagne we'd been saving. I got you something, she said, handing me a small wrapped box. Inside was a compass necklace. Simple, silver, elegant. So you always know which direction is forward, she said. I put it on and didn't take it off. The alliance wasn't about replacing my family. It was about discovering what love actually looked like when it wasn't conditional, when it didn't demand performance or perfection or constant proof of worth. Sarah taught me that chosen family isn't less than blood family. Sometimes it's the only family that counts. Drop of blood. The people who witness your healing become part of your story. The call came at 4:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was 3 weeks away from paying off the final dollar. 3 weeks from submitting my resignation. 3 weeks from freedom. My phone screamed into the darkness, and I grabbed it instinctively, heart hammering the way it always does when you work in healthcare and get pre-dawn calls. Madison's name lit up the screen. I almost didn't answer. Almost sent it to voicemail like I had every other call for the past year. But something, exhaustion maybe, or the residual programming of sisterhood, made me swipe to accept. What? It's Dad. Her voice was wrecked, raw with crying. He had a heart attack. We're at Mercy General. Mom's. A sob cut her off. Mom's falling apart and I don't know what to do and you need to come now, Erika, please. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. Is he? He's in surgery. They said the next few hours are critical. Please. I know you're mad at us, but he's our father. I was already out of bed, pulling on clothes I didn't remember choosing. I'm coming. The drive to Mercy General took 20 minutes. I made it in 12. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. My chest felt like someone had reached inside and squeezed. Every breath came shallow and sharp, and my mind kept looping the same thought. Not like this. Don't let it end like this. Because underneath all the anger, all the hurt, all the careful distance I'd built, there was still that scared little girl who wanted her father to love her, who'd spent her whole life chasing his approval, who'd never stopped hoping that maybe somehow he'd wake up one day and see her. And now he might die without ever seeing her at all. I parked in the ER lot and ran. I found them in the surgical waiting room. My mother sat hunched in a plastic chair, face buried in her hands. Madison paced near the windows, phone pressed to her ear. Mascara streaked down her face. She saw me first. Erika. She ended her call and rushed over, pulling me into a hug I didn't return. Thank God. I didn't think you'd actually come. What happened? He was having chest pains last night. Mom thought it was indigestion. But this morning he collapsed in the kitchen and... Her voice broke. The paramedics said if she'd waited 5 more minutes. My mother looked up. Her eyes were swollen, red-rimmed, devastated. For a moment we just stared at each other across that ugly waiting room, and I saw every unspoken thing hanging between us. Then she stood and walked over. You came, she whispered. Of course I came. She pulled me into her arms and I let her. Felt her shake against me. Smelled her familiar perfume mixed with fierce sweat and hospital disinfectant. I'm so sorry, she sobbed into my shoulder. For everything. For all of it. I should have. I never meant to. Mom. Not now. But I need you to know. Mom. I pulled back, held her shoulders. Where's the surgeon? What did they say? The next 4 hours were a special kind of hell. We sat in that waiting room while doctors came and went with updates that said everything and nothing. Stable but critical. Doing as well as can be expected. The next 24 hours will tell us more. Madison cried constantly. My mother alternated between silent shock and panicked questions. And I sat there feeling like I was splitting in two. Part of me was the daughter. The one who'd bandaged her father's cut hand when she was 8. Who'd watched him teach her to ride a bike. Who'd believed he hung the moon. That part was terrified. Praying to a God she wasn't sure she believed in. Bargaining. Let him live and I'll forgive everything. Let him live and I'll stay. Just let him live. But the other part, the part that had spent 14 months learning to see clearly, kept whispering, this doesn't change what he did. This doesn't erase the hurt. And I hated that voice. Hated that even now, even here, I couldn't just be a daughter worried about her father. I had to also be the woman he'd broken, holding her boundaries against the tide of crisis and guilt, and the unspoken demand that trauma erases accountability. Around hour 3, Madison sat down next to me. Thank you for coming, she said quietly. He's my father. I know. But after everything, I wasn't sure. I looked at her, really looked. She'd lost weight. Her perfect hair was unwashed, pulled back in a messy ponytail. The golden child finally tarnished by real fear. Did you ever think about it? I asked. That night at your wedding. Did you ever think about what he said to me? She flinched. Erika. I'm not trying to start a fight. I'm genuinely asking. Because I need to know if you even remember. Of course I remember. And she was quiet for a long time. I thought you were overreacting. The honesty was almost worse than a lie. Why? Because. She twisted her hands together. Because that's just how Dad is. He makes jokes. He doesn't mean anything by it. And you've always been so sensitive. I'm going to stop you right there. My voice was calm. Too calm. Because if you finish that sentence, if you tell me one more time that my pain is a personality flaw, I'm walking out of this hospital and you'll never hear from me again. Her eyes widened. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. That's the problem. You all mean it. Every dismissal. Every minimization. Every time you've made me feel like I'm crazy for being hurt by cruelty, you meant it. Because it's easier than admitting you were part of it. I wasn't trying to hurt you. Neither was he. Neither was Mom. Nobody's trying. But I'm still hurt. And I'm still leaving. Even now? Even if? She couldn't say it. Even now. Madison's face crumpled. How can you be so cold? And there it was. The word I'd been waiting for. Cold. Because setting boundaries makes you cold. Protecting yourself makes you cold. Refusing to light yourself on fire to keep them warm makes you cold. I'm not cold, I said. I'm just done being the only one who bends. Hour 5, a surgeon emerged. We stood as one, a family bound by blood and crisis if nothing else. He's stable, the surgeon said, and my mother sobbed with relief. We were able to place 2 stents. The damage was significant, but he's responsive and his vitals are improving. The next few days will be critical, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Can we see him? Madison asked. Soon. He's in recovery now. We'll come get you when he's ready for visitors. The surgeon left. My mother sank back into her chair. Hands clasped in prayer position. Madison called her husband with the update. And I stood there, feeling the full weight of what I just agreed to by showing up. Because they'd think this changed things. They'd think crisis had erased history. That fear had bought forgiveness. My phone buzzed. Sarah. How are you holding up? I stepped into the hallway to respond. I don't know. He might be okay. But I feel like I'm drowning. Her reply came immediately. You're allowed to be relieved he's alive and still angry about how he treated you. Both are true. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. What if I can't leave now? What if walking away after this makes me the monster they've always said I was? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. The people who made you feel like a monster your whole life don't get to decide if you're one now. You showed up. You sat with them through this. You did more than most people would. And you can still leave. But what if? Erika, listen to me. A crisis doesn't cancel abuse. And your father having a heart attack doesn't mean you have to give him access to yours. They let us see him one at a time. My mother went first. Then Madison. Then a nurse appeared and said, Erika? He's asking for you. My legs felt like water. Madison touched my arm as I passed. He's really weak. Don't upset him, okay? The implication was clear. Your boundaries are less important than his comfort. I pulled my arm away and followed the nurse. He looked small in that hospital bed. That was the first thing I noticed. My father, who'd always seemed larger than life, untouchable in his confidence and control, looked fragile, diminished. The machines around him beeped and hissed, keeping time with a heart that had nearly quit. His eyes opened when I approached. Erika. His voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. I pulled a chair close to the bed. Hey, Dad. You came. Of course. His eyes filled with tears. I thought. Your mother said you hated us. The accusation wrapped in vulnerability. Classic. I don't hate you, I said. And it was true. Hate requires energy I didn't have anymore. I'm just protecting myself. From what? The question hung between us. And I realized this was it. The moment I'd been both dreading and craving. The chance to tell him everything. To make him understand. To finally be seen. But looking at him, weak and scared and tethered to machines, I understood something crucial. He'd never understand. Not because he couldn't. Because he didn't want to. Because understanding would require him to look at himself honestly. To admit he'd failed. To feel the weight of what he'd done to me for 28 years. And my father had never been good at being wrong. It doesn't matter, I said quietly. Yes, it does. Talk to me. Why? So you can tell me I'm being too sensitive? So you can explain why it was just a joke? So you can make me feel guilty for being hurt? I never meant. I know. Nobody ever means it. But I'm still hurt. I'm still leaving. And this, I gestured at the hospital room, the machines, the crisis. This doesn't change that. His face hardened even through the exhaustion. You'd abandon your family when I almost died? You abandoned me a long time ago, Dad. You just never noticed because I kept showing up anyway. That's not fair. Neither was that toast. Neither was a lifetime of being compared to Madison and found wanting. Neither was co-signing a loan you never even thanked me for. My voice stayed steady. But here we are. He looked away. Your mother's right. You've become cruel. And there it was. The final confirmation I needed. I'd shown up at 5 a.m. Sat with them for hours. Come to his bedside. And still I was the problem. Not him for nearly dying without ever apologizing. Not them for making my love conditional on my silence. Me. For having boundaries. I stood up. I'm glad you're going to be okay, I said. Genuinely. But I'm still moving to Seattle. And I'm still done. Erika. Get better, Dad. Take care of yourself. I walked out before he could respond. In the hallway, Madison was waiting. Did you make up? She asked hopefully. No. But he almost died. And I showed up. And I'll keep showing up until he's stable. But then I'm gone, Madison. I'm so far gone. How can you be so selfish? The word hit different this time. Not like an arrow. Like confirmation. You want to know what's selfish? I turned to face her fully. Making someone's trauma about your discomfort. Demanding they forgive on your timeline. Expecting them to sacrifice their peace. So you can keep pretending everything's fine. That's not what I'm. That's exactly what you're doing. You want me to stay so you don't have to feel guilty. So the family looks intact. So you can keep being the golden child without wondering if maybe the price was too high. Her face went white. I never asked to be. I know. But you benefited from it. And you never once questioned it. You never defended me. You never said, hey, that's not fair to Erika. You just accepted your pedestal and let me suffocate in the basement. I didn't know. Yes, you did. You just didn't care. The truth sat between us, ugly and undeniable. Madison's eyes filled with tears. I thought we were sisters. So did I. Until I realized you'd only ever been my sister when it was convenient. I walked away. This time nobody followed. I drove home in the early morning light, hand steady on the wheel, that compass necklace cold against my throat. Sarah was right. A crisis doesn't cancel abuse. And showing up doesn't mean you have to stay. Drop of blood, the cruelest betrayal is the one you do to yourself. When you abandon your boundaries for people who've never honored them. My father came home from the hospital on a Thursday. I wasn't there. Madison sent photos to the family group chat I hadn't left yet. Dad in a wheelchair being pushed through the front door. Mom fussing over pillows, a welcome home banner hanging in the living room I'd helped paint when I was 16. No one asked where I was. They knew. The final payment cleared on a Friday morning 3 weeks later. I sat at my kitchen table watching the number drop to 0, and for the first time in 14 months, maybe in 28 years, I felt like I could breathe all the way down to the bottom of my lungs. 0. No more debt. No more financial chains. No more excuses they could use, no more leverage they could pull. I was free. Called Sarah. It's done, I said. She understood immediately. How does it feel? Like I just walked out of a cage I didn't know I was in. That's because you did. Now comes the hard part. Leaving. Telling them you're leaving. I drafted the email 100 times. Deleted it 101. Too harsh. Too soft. Too detailed. Too vague. Too apologetic. Too cold. But the truth was simpler than I'd been making it. I'm moving to Seattle. My last day at the hospital is in 2 weeks. I won't be reachable after that. This isn't a negotiation. This is goodbye. I hope Dad continues to recover. I hope you all find peace. But I can't be part of this family anymore. Not the way it's been and not the way you want it to be. I'm not asking for understanding. I'm just letting you know. Take care. Erika. I stared at the words for 20 minutes. Then I hit send before I could change my mind. The response came in less than 5 minutes. My mother called. I sent it to voicemail. Madison texted. Are you fucking serious right now? Then Dad just got home. Then. This is the most selfish thing you've ever done. My father's message came an hour later. We need to talk. In person. Tomorrow. No excuses. I read them all. Felt the familiar pull of guilt, the old programming screaming that I was wrong, that I was cruel, that good daughters don't do this. And then I archived the entire thread. Sarah met me for coffee that afternoon. They're losing their minds, I said, showing her the messages. Of course they are. You just took away their favorite punching bag. That's not. Erika. She gave me that look. The therapist look that cut through bullshit. What did they call you when you set a boundary? Selfish. And when you protected your peace? Cruel. And when you stopped being available? Dramatic. Ungrateful. Too sensitive. Right. Because in their world, your only value is what you provide them. So when you stop providing it, when you reclaim yourself, they lose their purpose for you. And that terrifies them. I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup. My dad wants to meet tomorrow. Are you going? I don't know. Part of me thinks I owe him that much. One final conversation. Closure. Do you need closure? Or do you think he deserves the chance to change your mind? The question hit like a slap. I don't know. Then let me ask you this. What would closure look like? What would he have to say that would make you feel complete? I thought about it. Really thought. An apology. A real one. I'm sorry for the toast. I'm sorry for making you feel worthless. I'm sorry for treating you like you didn't matter. An acknowledgement. You were right. We did fail you. We took you for granted. A release. Go. Be free. You don't owe us anything. But even imagining those words in my father's voice felt like fiction. He won't say what I need him to say, I whispered. Probably not. So why go? Exactly. I didn't respond to his message. But that night he showed up at my apartment. I heard the knock and looked through the peephole. There he was, thinner than before, moving carefully like his chest still hurt, but standing tall. Commanding. The way he'd always stood. I could have pretended I wasn't home. But I opened the door. Dad, can I come in? I wanted to say no. Wanted to keep this boundary, this final wall. But curiosity, or maybe that dying hope, made me step aside. He walked in slowly, taking in the packed boxes, the bare walls, the evidence of my exit. "You're really doing this," he said. "Yes. Because of a joke I made a year ago. Not I'm sorry. Not I was wrong. Just defense." "No," I said. "Because of 28 years of being treated like I don't matter." He turned to face me. "That's not true. Dad. You called me worthless. In front of 200 people. You laughed. It was a joke, Erika. Jesus Christ, how many times do I have to say it? It wasn't a joke to me. And that's what you don't understand. You don't get to decide what hurts me. So I make one mistake. One." The laugh that came out of me was sharp. "Dad, I've been invisible to you my entire life. Every achievement I had was minimized. Every time I needed you, you chose Madison. Every time I tried to make you proud, you moved the goalpost. That's not fair. You told me I was taking up space." That's a direct quote. Your words. And you don't even remember saying it, do you? He had the decency to look uncomfortable. "I was trying to be funny. At my expense. Like you always have been. Like this whole family has been." I felt 14 months of careful control starting to crack. "I co-signed a loan for you. $17,000. And you never once thanked me. Never asked if I could afford it. Never offered to help when I was drowning. You never said you were struggling. I shouldn't have to." My voice broke. "That's the point. I shouldn't have to beg for basic consideration. I shouldn't have to perform and prove and sacrifice just to be treated like I'm worth something. You're being dramatic." There it is. That word. The one you always use when I dare to have feelings you don't want to deal with. We stood there, two strangers who shared DNA and nothing else. "Why did you really come here?" I asked quietly. "To talk sense into you. Not to apologize." "For what? For loving your sister? For being proud of her accomplishments? For making me feel like mine didn't count? For treating me like I was less than? For building a family where there was only room for one daughter to shine, and deciding it wouldn't be me?" His jaw tightened. "You're twisting everything. I'm finally seeing clearly. There's a difference. If you leave now while I'm recovering." His voice shifted. Harder. "If you abandon this family after everything we've been through, you'll regret it, Erika. You'll be alone. I've been alone my whole life, Dad. I was just too busy trying to earn your love to notice." "That's not." He stopped. Looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "You really believe that?" "Because it's true. We love you." "No. You love the version of me that doesn't inconvenience you. The one who shows up and helps and never complains. But the real me, the one with boundaries and self-respect and standards for how I deserve to be treated. You can't stand her." He was quiet for a long time. Then, "So that's it? You're just done?" "I'm done breaking myself to fit into spaces that were never designed to hold me." "What about your mother? What about Madison? What about them? You're their daughter. Their sister. Then they should have acted like it mattered." He shook his head. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe. But it's mine to make." He moved toward the door, each step measured and painful. At the threshold he turned back. "I didn't come here to lose you. Then you should have come here to apologize. I don't know how to give you what you want. That's the problem, Dad. You never did." After he left, I sat on the floor surrounded by boxes and cried. Not because I'd changed my mind. Because he'd confirmed what I already knew. He'd had his chance. One final opportunity to see me, acknowledge me, fight for me. And he'd chosen his pride instead. Sarah came over that night with wine and Chinese food. "He showed up," I said. And nothing. He defended himself. Called me dramatic. Said I'd regret it. Did he apologize? No. Did he ask what he could do differently? No. Did he acknowledge your pain at all? No. She poured us both wine. "Then you have your answer. Why does it still hurt? Because you're grieving. Not who he was, but who you needed him to be. And that's the hardest loss, the death of hope." I took a long drink. "I keep thinking about what he said. That I'll be alone. Are you alone right now?" I looked at her, "My friend, my witness, my chosen family." "No." "Then he's wrong. You're not alone. You're just finally free. The email came the next morning. From my mother. Your father is devastated. His doctor says the stress could cause another heart attack. Is that what you want? To kill him? I don't know what happened to you, Erika. You used to be such a sweet girl. Now you're just cold. Angry. Cruel. I hope you can live with yourself. I read it twice. Then I forwarded it to Sarah with one word, wow. Her response. Block them. Now. Before they do more damage. I stared at my mother's words. The manipulation. The weaponization of my father's health. The implication that setting boundaries was equivalent to murder. And I realized this was the reckoning. Not some dramatic confrontation. Not a moment where they suddenly understood and apologized and released me with love. Just this. The final confirmation that they'd never change. That they'd rather make me the villain than look at their own behavior. That they'd burn it all down before admitting they were wrong. I blocked my mother's number. Then my father's. Then Madison's. One by one, I severed the digital cords that had kept me tethered. And when it was done, when my phone sat silent in my hand, I felt nothing. Not grief. Not guilt. Not anger. Just peace. My last shift at the hospital was a week later. My coworkers threw me a small party. Cake and cards and promises to stay in touch. Ginny cried. Sarah gave me a framed photo of the two of us with a note on the back. For when you need to remember you're not alone. I drove home that night through empty streets, my entire life packed into boxes in a storage unit, waiting for the moving truck that would take it all to Seattle. In 3 days I'd be gone. And they'd never find me. Drop of blood. The reckoning isn't when they finally understand. It's when you finally stop needing them to. Seattle smelled like rain and coffee and new beginnings. I stood on the balcony of my new apartment. A one-bedroom in Capitol Hill with exposed brick and windows that actually let in light. And watched the city wake up below me. People walking dogs. Joggers with headphones. A world full of strangers who didn't know my name or my history. It had been 3 months. 92 days since I'd driven away from everything I'd ever known. My car packed with the few things that mattered. Sarah following behind in her own vehicle because she'd taken a week off to help me settle in. 92 days since I'd blocked the last number. 92 days since I'd chosen myself. The first month had been the hardest. Not because I missed them, I didn't, not really. But because the guilt was relentless. It woke me up at 3 a.m. whispering that I was selfish, cruel, unforgivable. That good daughters don't disappear. That family is supposed to be forever. I'd call Sarah on those nights, and she'd talk me down from the ledge of going back. You're not guilty of protecting yourself, she'd remind me. You're just experiencing the withdrawal from a lifetime of conditioning. What if I'm wrong? What if they're right and I'm just... Erika, stop. Listen to me. In 3 months, has a single one of them tried to actually apologize? Not manipulate or guilt trip or threaten, but genuinely apologize. Silence. Exactly. They had your number, your email, your hospital. If they wanted to reach you with anything other than blame, they could have. The fact that they didn't tells you everything. She was right. But knowing it intellectually and feeling it emotionally were different things. The second month I started to breathe. My new job was everything the old one wasn't: supportive management, reasonable hours, colleagues who actually listened when I spoke. I wasn't the invisible one anymore. I wasn't anyone's second choice. I joined a hiking group, started therapy with a trauma specialist Sarah had recommended, adopted a cat from the shelter, a scraggly orange thing with one torn ear who'd been returned twice for being too independent. Yeah, I told him on the drive home, his carrier on my passenger seat. I get it. I named him Compass. The third month I started to heal. Not in some dramatic cinematic way, but in small moments that accumulated like interest. Waking up without dread. Saying no to a coworker's request without apologizing 17 times. Going to dinner alone and enjoying it instead of feeling like I was being punished. Realizing I'd gone 3 days without checking if they'd tried to contact me. Then a week. Then 2. I stopped performing for an invisible audience. Stopped editing myself in case someone was watching. Stopped carrying the weight of their expectations like stones in my pockets. I just existed. And it was enough. Sarah visited in month 4. We sat on my balcony drinking wine while Compass wound between our chairs, and she smiled at me in a way that made my chest tight. What? I asked. You look different. I cut my hair. That's not what I mean. You look lighter. Like you're taking up the right amount of space for the first time. I thought about that. About the version of me who'd walked into my sister's wedding reception a year and a half ago, already braced for impact. Who'd spent 28 years making herself smaller, quieter, less. I think I forgot what it felt like. I said quietly. To not be shrinking. Do you miss them? The question I'd been asking myself. I miss the idea of them, I admitted. I miss having parents who call to check in. A sister who texts me stupid memes. Family dinners that don't feel like performance reviews. But the real them. I shook my head. No. I don't miss who they actually were. That's healthy. It's sad. Both things can be true. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the city. Have they tried to reach you? Sarah asked. Madison created a fake Instagram account to message me. I blocked it. My mom tried calling from a random number. I didn't answer. My dad. I paused. My dad sent a letter to the hospital. They forwarded it here. Did you read it? Not yet. It's been sitting on my counter for 2 weeks. Are you going to? I don't know. Part of me wants to know. If he finally said what I needed to hear. But the other part thinks it doesn't matter anymore. That ship has sailed. What does your gut tell you? I looked at the envelope sitting on my kitchen counter. My father's handwriting across the front. The same handwriting that used to sign report cards with good, but could be better, while Madison's got exceptional. That nothing he says will change anything. I'm already gone. I've already grieved. Reading it now would just be reopening a wound that's finally starting to close. Then don't. That easy. That easy. You don't owe him your attention just because he finally decided to give you his. I burned the letter that night. Didn't read it. Didn't agonize over it. Just took it to the building's courtyard, dropped it in the fire pit someone had left out, and watched it curl into ash. Sarah stood next to me, silent witness. How does it feel? She asked. Like the last chain just broke. Month 6 brought something unexpected. Joy. Not the manic, desperate kind I used to perform for approval, but quiet, genuine moments of contentment that snuck up on me when I wasn't looking. Laughing with my hiking group at the summit of Mount Si. Dancing alone in my apartment while making dinner. Waking up on a Sunday morning with nowhere to be and no one to disappoint. I started writing. Nothing fancy. Just journal entries about the woman I was becoming. The one who didn't apologize for existing. Who set boundaries without guilt. Who chose peace over performance. One entry, written on a particularly clear morning. I used to think freedom meant having their approval. That if I could just be good enough, accomplish enough, sacrifice enough, they'd finally love me the way I needed. But I was wrong. Freedom isn't earning their love. It's realizing you don't need it. Freedom is waking up 3,000 miles away and understanding that their opinion of you was never the truth. It was just their failure dressed up as your inadequacy. Freedom is knowing you are not too much. You are not too little. You are exactly enough. And anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve a place in your story. Month 9 I met someone. Her name was Alex. She worked at a bookstore in Pike Place Market, had paint permanently under her fingernails, and laughed like she meant it. We met when I came in looking for a book on trauma recovery. She recommended 3, then asked if I wanted to get coffee. I said yes without overthinking it. On our 3rd date, sitting in a tiny ramen shop while rain hammered the windows, she asked about my family. That's complicated, I said. Okay. I don't really talk to them anymore. Okay. I waited for the judgment, the questions, the implication that something must be wrong with me if my own family didn't want me around. But Alex just nodded. Family's complicated. You don't owe me an explanation. You're not going to ask why? Do you want to tell me? Not really. Then I don't need to know. Not until you're ready. She reached across the table, squeezed my hand. Who you were with them doesn't define who you are now. I almost cried into my miso soup. 1 year after I left, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Almost let it go to voicemail like I had every other suspicious call. But something, curiosity maybe, or the confidence of someone who'd already walked through fire made me pick up. Hello. Erika. My mother's voice. Smaller than I remembered. Please don't hang up. My finger hovered over the end button. What do you want, Mom? To talk. Really talk. Not to fight or convince you to come back. Just to talk. Why now? It's been a year. Because your father went to therapy. A pause. He made me go too. Together. And the therapist asked us to write down every time we dismissed you, every time we compared you to Madison, every time we treated you like you didn't matter. Her voice cracked. Erika, the list was so long. I sat down on my couch. Compass jumped into my lap purring. Why are you telling me this? Because he finally understands. We finally understand. What we did to you. How we broke you. She was crying now. And I'm so sorry. I know it's too late. I know you're gone and you have every right to never speak to us again. But I needed you to know that we finally see it. We see you. The words I'd spent 28 years waiting for. And they felt empty. Not because she didn't mean them, but because I didn't need them anymore. I appreciate you telling me, I said quietly. Is there any chance we could rebuild? Even just a little. I thought about it. Really thought about it. A year ago, this call would have changed everything. I would have cried with relief, packed my bags, driven back to prove I was worth their effort. But now I had a life. A good one. Full of people who'd never needed a therapist to tell them I mattered. Who'd seen my worth without a 12-month intervention. I don't know, Mom. That's not a no. It's not a yes either. Can I call you again? In a few months maybe. I'll think about it. Okay. She sounded so small. I love you, Erika. I know I didn't show it, but I do. I always have. I know. And I did. In the broken, insufficient way she was capable of. But love isn't enough if it doesn't come with respect. I understand. We sat in silence for a moment, two women connected by blood and separated by years of damage. I have to go, I said finally. Okay. Take care of yourself, sweetheart. You too, Mom. I hung up and sat with it. The apology I'd been chasing. The acknowledgement I'd been craving. The validation I'd been dying for. And it didn't fix anything. Because healing hadn't waited for their permission. Sarah called an hour later. How are you? My mom called. They're in therapy. She apologized. How do you feel? Relieved. Sad. Vindicated. Indifferent. All of it at once. Are you going to let them back? I looked around my apartment. At the life I'd built from scratch. The photos on the wall, me and Sarah at the Space Needle, me and Alex at a concert, me and my hiking group at dawn. The cat purring in my lap. The peace I'd fought so hard to find. Maybe, I said. Someday. On my terms. With boundaries they'll actually respect. I paused. But I'm not in a hurry. For the first time in my life, I'm not in a hurry to prove myself to anyone. Good. Is it weird that the apology didn't change anything? No. Because you already did the work of healing without them. Their apology is for their peace, not yours. Then what was it all for? The leaving? The grieving? The rebuilding? Sarah's voice was gentle. It was for you to learn that you're not defined by their love. That you're whole without their approval. That the girl who was told she took up space could become the woman who knows she deserves the whole damn room. 2 years after I left, I went back. Not to stay. Just to visit. My father had another health scare, minor, but it reminded me that time wasn't infinite. That someday, years from now, I'd look back and decide if I wanted regret or closure. I chose closure. Sarah drove with me. Alex stayed in Seattle with Compass. This is yours to do, she said, kissing me goodbye. But I'll be here when you get back. The drive felt shorter than I remembered. We pulled up to my parents' house, the one I'd grown up in with the oak tree I'd climbed and the porch I'd read on, and I sat in the car for 5 minutes breathing. You ready? Sarah asked. No. But I'm doing it anyway. She squeezed my hand. I'll be right here if you need an exit. I walked to the door and knocked. My mother answered. Older, grayer, smaller than she'd been in my memory. Erika. Her eyes filled with tears. You came. I came. We stood there, awkward and uncertain until she stepped aside. Inside, my father sat in his chair. The same one he'd always claimed, the throne of the living room. He stood when he saw me, moving slower but steadier. Erika. Dad. We didn't hug. Didn't rush to close the distance. We just looked at each other, two people learning how to exist in the same space after years of absence. Thank you for coming, he said quietly. I'm not staying long. I know. I'm just grateful you're here at all. We sat in the living room, me on the couch, them in their respective chairs, like we were strangers navigating a business meeting. Madison wasn't there. She'd moved to Boston with her husband and their baby, a little girl whose photos I'd seen on Instagram but never met. How have you been? My mother asked. Good. Really good, actually. Seattle treating you well? Yeah. I love it there. Silence. Then my father cleared his throat. I've been working with a therapist for 2 years now, and she made me write you a letter. The one you never read. I burned it, I said. He nodded. I figured. So I'll say it now if you'll let me. I waited. I was wrong. About everything. About how I treated you, how I saw you, how I made you feel like you didn't matter. His voice cracked. You were never taking up space, Erika. You were filling it. And I was too stupid and proud to see it. My chest tightened. I don't expect you to forgive me, he continued. I don't even expect you to believe me. But I need you to know that I see it now. What I did. What we all did. And if I could go back and change it, I would. But you can't, I said softly. No. I can't. And it doesn't undo the damage. No. It doesn't. I looked at him, this man who'd shaped so much of my pain, and I felt nothing. Not anger. Not love. Just the distant recognition of someone who used to have power over me but didn't anymore. I appreciate the apology, I said. I do. But I need you to understand something. I didn't come back because I need you. I came back because I needed to know I could stand in this room and not break. He nodded slowly. And I can. I'm standing here. And I'm whole and I'm okay. Not because of you, but in spite of you. My mother wiped at her eyes. Can we? She started. Can we try? To be something? Even if it's not what it was. I don't know what it was, Mom. That's the problem. I spent my whole life thinking we were a family. But families don't rank their children. Families don't make love conditional. Families don't laugh when someone they're supposed to protect gets hurt. We're trying to be better. I know. And that's good. For you. For your healing. But my healing happened without you. And I don't know if there's room for you in what I've built. So this is goodbye? My father asked. No. Just not a reunion. Maybe someday we can build something new. Something honest. But it'll take time. And work. And the understanding that I don't owe you access to my life just because we share DNA. What do you need from us? My mother asked. Space. Respect. And the acceptance that I might never trust you the way I did before. Because you broke that. And I'm the one who had to rebuild myself. I stayed for an hour. We talked about surface things, my job, their health, Madison's baby. It wasn't warm. It wasn't healing. But it was honest. And when I left, I felt lighter. Not because we'd fixed everything. But because I'd proven to myself that I could face them and still walk away whole. Sarah was waiting in the car. How was it? She asked as I buckled in. Sad. Awkward. Necessary. Do you regret going? No. But I don't regret leaving either. She started the engine. That's growth, my friend. We drove away, and I watched my childhood home disappear in the side mirror. And I didn't look back. 3 years later, I'm sitting on my balcony, a different one now in a house Alex and I bought together, watching the sun set over Puget Sound. Compass is asleep on my lap. Inside, Alex is cooking dinner, singing off-key to whatever's playing on her phone. My phone buzzes. A text from Madison, baby's first birthday party next month. I know it's a long shot, but we'd love to have you here. I stare at the message for a long time. 3 years ago, I would have said no immediately. Would have protected my peace with walls too high to climb. But 3 years is a long time. Long enough to heal. Long enough to build a life so full that their presence or absence doesn't define me anymore. I type back. I'll think about it. Send me the details. Her response is immediate. Really? Oh my God, Erika, that would mean everything. I set the phone down and breathe in the salt air. Maybe I'll go. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll dip my toes back into family gatherings with boundaries like steel and an exit plan in my back pocket. Or maybe I'll stay here, in this life I built from the ashes of the old one, and that'll be enough. Either way, I'm free. Free to choose. Free to protect myself. Free to say yes or no without guilt. Free to know that my worth isn't determined by their ability to see it. Sarah was right all along. Some kids make you proud. Others teach you that you never needed the approval in the first place. Drop of blood, was revenge worth it? Comment below, would you have gone back? Or would you have stayed 3,000 miles away forever? If this story made you feel seen, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away.